We are here again with another episode of Mind Explorations. Today's guest is Adam Eason. And Adam is not just a published researcher, he's also the founder of the UK Hypnosis Convention, which is in London every year in November. And you have a hypnosis school as well. And for the rest, I'd like you to introduce yourself, Adam. Welcome to my podcast.
Uh, welcome to Astrid. Thank you very much indeed for having me here. I'm really excited, really looking forward to speaking to you this evening.
Wonderful. Okay, so Adam, you have three, four, five roles. I'm not entirely sure what it is you do. So would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I was a clinician and qualified as a hypnotherapist in 1997. And still work as a clinician to a lesser extent today. I run a training college that's based in the south of England, here where
Mhm.
I am currently, and and I've been running that since the sort of early 2000s, and the first course that I ever ran and the first training that I ever did was about self-hypnosis. My first ever book was on the topic of self-hypnosis. I don't really talk about that book much anymore
Mhm.
today because it was sort of built and written upon a premise that's really outdated and ill-informed and misinformed today. It still happens to be my best-selling book of all time, so
Okay.
it's a bitter pill to swallow. But I wrote a better one, and that sold at least 3 copies since I first got that one going, which is something that I was far more proud of. And I lecture for Bournemouth University as well, and and uh, I did my research and PhD at Bournemouth University, which was exploring the use of self-hypnosis to to develop cognitive functioning. I'm sure we
Mhm.
can roll our sleeves up and talk a little bit about that. But my research was using self-hypnosis to inhibit the Stroop effect. I don't know if you
Mhm.
know what the Stroop effect is, but in psychology, if any of you have played brain training apps or games, for example, there's a task in those very often whereby a word comes up in a color, and you are tasked with pressing a button of the color of the font. Now, if the word blue comes up and the font color, the ink, is in blue, you press the blue button in an absolute nanosecond. If,
Mhm.
however, the word red comes up and it's in blue ink, your anterior cingulate cortex attempts to fathom the difference between you reading the word, which sort of obscures and creates a delay, for you to actually decipher what color the ink is. And that delay is called the Stroop effect. Back in the
Mhm.
1980s and 1990s, a man called Amir Raz created something called word blindness suggestion. And they would deliver suggestions to people to say that they had complete blindness for the words, or the words just wouldn't mean anything. And this would,
Mhm.
sometimes completely inhibit the Stroop effect, the delay in the response. And this is something that gradually over time has been honed and is evidence that hypnosis even exists, which is very cool because you can't pretend or just comply with regards to the Stroop effect, you know. So anyway, I'm some years later, and some published papers later, we used self-hypnosis to inhibit the Stroop effect
Mhm.
with similar results.
Mhm.
So similar results in terms of efficaciousness and effectiveness, but very different results in terms of things like phenomenology. And probably that will influence my response to Jay's very brilliant question later on.
Mhm. I'll be asking you that question because I've written it down. But okay, the
And yeah,
Stroop
and
effect. Mhm.
just to finish off, by the way,
Yeah,
my own
yeah. Sorry.
bio. Even though I run and organise the UK Hypnosis Convention, I wasn't actually the founder. The founder was a very good friend of mine, a man called Nick Ebden,
Oh, Nick,
and
right.
he set it up and created it, and I took it over from him after in its third ever year.
Right.
And
Sorry, Nick, about saying something wrong there apparently. Okay, you're the organizer. Okay.
yeah,
Um,
I'm still the
all right.
organizer and the owner. And yeah,
Okay. So I did see you 2 years ago at the UK conference lifting weights and demonstrating self-hypnosis. We are going to get into that and
yeah.
the physical side
Oh
of it.
no, I hate talking
Oh,
about that.
no, wait a second. Your description says you love going on
Yeah,
about that
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah,
Anyway, but first of all, I would like to go back to the Stroop effect.
yeah,
So, you inhibited the effect that people would even recognize the words, but would
yeah,
always recognize the color, and that way you could shorten the reaction time. Is that correct?
yeah. That's correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So the challenge that you have with self hypnosis compared to hetero hypnosis
Hmm.
with 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 that kind of science is that you know you are the one giving yourself the suggestion.
Hmm.
So you're giving yourself the suggestion, which is basically creating awareness of the very thing that you're attempting to not be aware of,
Okay.
which is which is which is a very interesting conundrum. So it does mean that. So one of the things we also used was it was a pupillometer. So that is we would use a pupillometer to measure the size of people's pupils when they were
Right.
attempting to decipher, and what the size of the pupils demonstrates is how much effort is being put into it.
Hmm.
So, typically what happens with hetero-hypnosis is that you can tell that people are blind to the word as a result of the hypnotic suggestions and putting no effort whatsoever into it.
Hmm.
We There are there are sort of subjective measurements of agency that we engage in, something called Soars scales as well, which
Hmm.
measures levels of involuntariness and levels of effortfulness and
Hmm.
effortlessness. And with self hypnosis, there's more of a sense of agency, so that
Hmm.
there's more of a sense of, or less. Um, uh, there's similar levels. You can deceive yourself. We can talk about self-deception a little bit later on because it's actually a
Yeah.
real pet subject of mine and something very relevant to the weightlifting stuff and so on. But um the 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 involuntariness is slightly different, but the effortfulness
Hmm.
is notably different. So phenomenologically, it feels as if you're putting more effort in than hetero hypnosis, but
Hmm.
efficaciousness. And this is not just
Hmm.
within my research, but generally, I had a meta-analysis published as well in the Psychology of Consciousness journal, and
Hmm.
our meta-analysis demonstrated that pretty much, clinical applications across the board, self-hypnosis was just as effective as hetero-hypnosis, and in some instances even more effective. But
Okay.
again, the distinctions are mainly phenomenological. So one's
Hmm.
own subjective experience tends to be that we're putting slightly more effort in when you're doing it as self-hypnosis in
Yeah.
particular.
Okay, so just for to make it very simple, that experiment with the Stroop effect,
Yeah.
which suggestion did people give themselves to not see the words?
Yeah. So one of the things that we have to be very careful doing in research is that if you say to them, look, give yourself this suggestion, ultimately it's the suggestion rather than something being wholly self-suggested and self-directed, which is something that we want. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things that we've argued, that I have argued in a couple of my publications, a couple of my peer-reviewed journal publications, has been that audio hypnosis, for example, is not self-hypnosis. It doesn't constitute self-hypnosis. All that
Mm-hmm.
is hypnotist absent. The
Yeah.
mechanism that's making it effective is still hetero. So similarly, when we are, if we're then giving someone the suggestion for them to give themselves in turn, whether that's through a read document or through audio or something like that, we run the risk of it becoming ultimately the same mechanism as hetero-hypnosis. And so how do you make it different?
Mm-hmm.
So what we did is we told people that the general flavor of what the word blindness suggestion was,
Mm-hmm.
and they would and tell them what the aim was, and that it's their intention, and for them to engage in expectation and a wide range of other things that constituted and contributed to the self-hypnosis, but ultimately to create the suggestion for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
um, um, in order for them to not connect with the word.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm imagining it like, the RAS, reticular activating system. You don't tell yourself, don't see the pink elephant,
No,
but
right,
you
of
tell
course.
yourself, only see the gray elephant. Is that correct?
Well, typically what we were saying was that when words come up, they're just meaningless objects,
Okay.
or that you see them as gibberish or something, or that you just don't connect with them, or that you look beyond them and you see
Mm-hmm.
past them, and so on. So potentially their suggestions aren't necessarily kind of words. They're sometimes almost to give themselves a strategy to do
Mm-hmm.
whatever, kind of problem solving almost.
Okay, so you could use that because the Stroop effect, of course, you use that because it's easy to measure and easy to get results in
Yeah,
research.
exactly. And for us to
Okay.
isolate the variables, which is,
Yeah.
either self-hypnosis or hetero-hypnosis, or nothing, or just imagination or something, a control group. It's very easy to isolate just that thing.
Yeah. Okay, so you could use the same sort of suggestion to better focus, for example, on your Word document instead of everything around it, correct? So you would be the same thing or
Yeah,
similar.
yeah,
Yeah?
yeah. Studying, for focusing at work and doing all manner of different things. I mean,
Hmm.
my major interest is active alert
Hmm.
applications of self-hypnosis, so
Can you
engaging in
explain
it
that for
when.
people who don't know what that is,
Yeah,
please?
so a lot of people just assume that in order to experience hypnosis, you must be, in a reclining chair with a crochet
Hmm.
blanket on, while the hypnotist is talking like a hush FM DJ playing whale music, and you need to be zonked out, dribbling down yourselves.
Hmm.
Whereas active alert, in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, sort of pioneered by a lady called Eva Banyai, and alongside Ernest Hilgard in the 70s, but then in the 80s and 90s, with a range of other researchers at the University of Budapest and beyond, um, they demonstrated that you could be hypnotized just as well when you were active. So typically,
Hmm.
what they did was use stationary bicycles in the office,
Hmm.
and people were pedaling stationary bicycles, being active and alert, and were responding just as effectively to hypnotic suggestions as if they were zonked out. Um,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
so what we mean by active alert to hypnosis is that you're still deriving the exact same reactions and responses to suggestions and to the hypnotic process, but you're not inanimate. You don't have
Hmm.
your eyes closed. You're still
Yeah.
capable of connecting with life and so
Hmm.
on. And
Yeah.
and it really supports perhaps, a leaning towards things like socio-cognitive theories and perspectives of hypnosis,
Mm-hmm.
because it means that you can start to sort of present self-hypnosis as a psychological skill, a
Mm-hmm.
cognitive mindset, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, rather
Yeah.
than trance state or altered state of consciousness, or something
Mm-hmm.
which potentially isn't that portable and doesn't have a huge amount of utility if you're not lying down. I mean,
Yeah.
I used to be an endurance athlete. I used to run ultramarathons and so on. One of my books was about using hypnosis for running,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to apply a lot of the skill set within that to today in slightly different fashion, with the sort of hybrid training that I do, and with the weightlifting, for example. You can't do those things with your eyes closed and with whale music on and a crochet blanket and a reclining chair. So that's what we mean ultimately by active alert. And
Mm-hmm.
when you have an active alert application of something as potent as self-hypnosis, it means that you get to use it in a a much broader scope. You get to use it in a much broader range of circumstances and situations.
Mm-hmm. So, but still the warning, if you're driving or operating heavy machinery, don't do self-hypnosis. That would apply in the same way as normal hypnosis.
Well, it's a difficult thing because ideally you want to have your wits about you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to have your wits about you, but some would argue that in fact you are more focused, more engaged with reality on occasions when you are purposefully and consciously directing your attention
Mm-hmm.
in a way that creates self-hypnosis. So self-hypnosis can be sharp. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be dull and mean that we're disconnected. On the contrary, if you look at some of the if you were to take a phenomenological description of F1 drivers, when their mindset when they are driving, I imagine it wouldn't be hugely different to the way in which we conceptualize self-hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
So, the way in which we conceptualize self-hypnosis is as a psychological skill, a mental skill, so that
Mm-hmm.
it's self-regulated, it's self-directed, you're creating self-suggestions,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's sort of a range of varying ordinary psychological factors such as expectancy, focus, attention,
Mm-hmm.
adoption of the role, engage in and sort of believed in imaginings, as Sabin and co used to make reference to in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
When those seemingly ordinary psychological factors combine, they become it raises suggestibility,
Mm-hmm.
and they become a potent force for one's mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
so it could potentially be argued that those things are present in a lot of or under a lot of circumstances where perhaps you might think, yeah, it's not safe, such as driving your car. You
Okay.
won't want to be close.
Okay.
You won't want to do it close with your eyes closed, of course.
No, that's my next question because usually hypnosis is defined as a focused state of inner attention or inner focus. So you said outward attention with self-hypnosis, active alert hypnosis.
Well, it can, yeah.
Um, so how do you define hypnosis and self-hypnosis? What's the difference?
Well, I'm not in a place just yet where I think I can absolutely agree and say hand on heart, this is what it is.
Hmm.
Typically I tend to educate my clients in a clinical environment in a particular way, and I always refer to it as a psychological skill, a
Hmm.
cognitive set, a mindset that when you engage expectancy, attention, focus, and we corral those with a sort of singular point of focus
Mm-hmm.
typically in the clinical environment, this raises suggestibility and creates the
Mm-hmm.
hypnotic process. I'm very keen not to nominalize it, not to objectify it and turn it into a blancmange.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a thing. Um, I'm very reluctant to refer to it as a state. I'm very reluctant to refer
Mm-hmm.
to it as an altered state. However,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's foolhardy for anybody to truly say, I know what it is, because, you know, we've got some pretty strong, no one can find anything wholly unique or about hypnosis currently. Neuroscience and the technology that we have to detect it. um
Mm-hmm.
there are some distinctions, with regards, like I said earlier, with regards to self and hetero hypnosis that
Mm-hmm.
people experience, but typically the regions of the brain that get affected and influenced tend to be the same as, to a certain extent they are with a lot of applications: mindfulness, meditation, and self-hypnosis, for example,
You're already making the
neuroscientifically.
segue.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
making
yeah, yeah, yeah.
This was Jay's
Neatly done,
question
eh?
earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, well
um
done. Yeah, it was because I'm like preparing. Where can I get in with a question
but
about how do
neuroscientific, yeah.
meditation and hypnosis differ? What's the difference there?
Well, neuroscientifically, they're very similar.
Hmm.
There's very similar regions of the brain being activated. However, um, the experience and applicability and the requirements are very, very different.
Hmm.
Self-hypnosis can be far, far more goal focused, than the vast majority of the forms of meditation. Um,
Hmm.
and I would say that, if I were going for surgery, for example, I would far more prefer to be equipped with self-hypnosis than meditation. Okay,
Hmm.
well, before you make that extraction of that epigastric hernia in my stomach region, I'm just going to meditate for a short while, compared to, allow me to engage in, hypnotic pain relief for myself, which I think is, the science and the research and people's personal experience would demonstrate the difference between the two, I think.
Would you say that self-hypnosis has a specific intention versus meditation is that the purpose is just to meditate?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, and it probably has a lot broader clinical scope. It
Hmm.
can be applied to a far broader range of clinical conditions and
Hmm.
applications, because you get to use suggestion in conjunction with it, far more readily than perhaps you do with meditation.
Hmm.
Um, so, I would say that probably the distinctions are around the sort of makeup of the psychological factors that contribute to it, as well as the intention, and probably phenomenologically, it's, again, it's, you experience it slightly differently, and its
Hmm.
applications are probably slightly different. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Um, we already had hypnosis versus self-hypnosis, what the difference is, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
Then I can
as
cross
far as
this out.
efficaciousness, as far as effectiveness and clinical effectiveness is concerned, the two are absolutely on par.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
the the beauty with self-hypnosis, okay, and I think one of the challenges that I have as someone to, you know, attempting to be evidence-based or research informed as well. I do my best not to be an out and out science fascist, but as far as, being research informed is concerned, we
Mhm.
face we face a lot of challenges in the field of hypnosis, because
Mhm.
there's a lot of myth and misconception, even amongst people posing as being extremely credible. There's a lot
Mhm.
of nonsense and misinformation. There's a lot of false neuroscience, and mistaken interpretations of what constitutes science and critical thinking and so on within this
Mhm.
field. Um, um, and we're forever competing with that. And
Mhm.
the field of hypnosis in general has has some pretty poor PR. And what
Hmm.
the, one of the things that we've argued in a lot of my research is that with it being something that you do to yourself ultimately, with it being something that you do to yourself and that you are ultimately in control of and in charge of, you get the
Hmm.
capacity to remove some of that paranoia of being controlled by another person. You get the
Hmm.
capacity to remove some of those myths and misconceptions and let people have a kind of straight, self-served experience, which
Hmm.
which I think has the ability to to be something really cool, really credible, and awesome.
Okay.
And we're not quite there yet.
Not quite, no. So
I
before
mean,
I ask,
by
yeah.
the way, one of the things that makes self-hypnosis theoretically important for people that I know I know the vast majority of people that I encounter are like, yeah, 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 we get all this theory stuff, Adam, but we want to be able to do things. We want to be able to do things. I also want to deadlift heavy weights, and I want to know about doing stuff. But theoretically, one of the reasons that self-hypnosis is important, because one of the main explanations that the field of frontline hypnotherapy posits as being an explanation of hypnosis is
Mhm.
that typically what happens is that you bypass the conscious mind, you access the subconscious mind, and people try to be neuroscientific about that bull
Mhm.
crap, and they say,
Left
oh
and
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
you're handing over executive
Mm.
control. You're disabling the frontal lobes. You're handing over executive control and to the hypnotist, who then delivers suggestions. Well, all of you guys know that, but you know how can that possibly explain self-hypnosis? How can dissociation models, neo-dissociation models, how can they possibly explain self-hypnosis if you are relinquishing executive control? You
Mm.
must be able to organize and orchestrate the hypnotic experience for yourself,
Mhm.
which does tend to lean more favorably towards a socio-cognitive perspective, where it becomes a
Mhm.
psychological skill,
Yeah.
and a little bit more about where you focus your attention and so on. Um, but despite me sounding convinced, I'm still not 100% sure, and I don't think
Sure
it's wise. I
about.
don't think it's wise for any of us to be 100% sure about what we think hypnosis is, and that we've
Mhm.
nailed the ultimate explanation with regards to what hypnosis and self-hypnosis are.
Okay, so you've just named a lot of brain parts, frontal lobe, etc. So what's the difference neuroscientifically between hypnosis and self-hypnosis?
Well, very little as it
Hmm.
happens.
Hmm.
Hetero-hypnosis, depending upon how it gets created, I
Hmm.
suppose, with
Hmm.
regards to, you know, um, um, well, ultimately, self-hypnosis tends to have less default mode network and more activation of prefrontal cortex. So
Hmm.
more of the things that you would expect, but
Yeah.
but but typically they tend to be pretty much the same. So
Hmm.
the distinctions and the differences tend to be quite negligible, really.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, um, what is self-hypnosis good for? What can you use it for besides the
So
Stroop effect?
yeah, yeah, because the Stroop, being able to inhibit the Stroop effect is not always that handy in day-to-day life.
No, not necessarily.
So, I mean, pain reduction first and
Hmm.
foremost, and active alert applications of pain reduction. In our meta-analysis of clinical applications of self-hypnosis, probably the most compelling evidence within there was supporting the application of pain
Hmm.
reduction
Yeah.
and pain relief. So absolutely, some of the other areas, reduction of anxiety.
Hmm.
There's a lot of there's a lot of applications with regards to obstetrics,
Mm-hmm.
for example. One of the biggest ever self-hypnosis studies was conducted by the NHS here in the UK, and
Mm-hmm.
was an abject failure. And had it been more successful, it may have seen self-hypnosis being introduced into the NHS.
Mm-hmm.
But they did everything that we advise people not to do with self-hypnosis research, and that
Right.
is that they gave a single audio session. They didn't promote self-regulated skills. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't promote repeated practice and application.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't promote additional psychological skills. You know, a lot of things that us hypnotists and therapists know as hypnotic phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
The self-hypnosis roadmap that we have out there teaches everybody how to elicit hypnotic phenomena for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and how to engage in those kind of things. Stress reduction, insomnia, even immune functioning. Some of the pediatric applications of self-hypnosis, whereby children were being asked to imagine, even though they have no clue what they look like or what they
Yeah.
mean, children were being asked to imagine while using self-hypnosis that their white blood vessels were expanding within their
Mm-hmm.
system, and their immune
Mm-hmm.
functioning was measurably improved, which I think is just very, very cool.
Yeah.
When that was also compared with them imagining sharks swimming through their bloodstream, uh,
Mm-hmm.
their immune responses, killer NK cells, all multiplied when they tested saliva and blood afterwards. So it's
Yeah.
really cool. But, uh, but I think these are clinical applications that we
Mm-hmm.
covered in,
Mm-hmm.
and that were included in the literature review that we had published, the meta-analysis for people that aren't into the world of academia because they've got lives and they're remotely interesting people. The people that are not into academia, a meta-analysis is basically a study about studies.
Mm-hmm.
And you put all the statistics from all the studies, you amalgamate it into particular statistical software to show whether it's effective and not. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, you're doing a lot of academic work for other academics to look at.
Yeah.
Um, but. So our meta-analysis that was published was clinical applications. I
Mm-hmm.
think these days its applications exist on a regular day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure everybody that's tuning into this will be aware of the waning ability of modern Western humans to focus for lengthy periods of time. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
gone are the days where people are prepared to sit down and do 30, 40-minute self-hypnosis sessions,
Mm-hmm.
without just either falling asleep or just being hugely distracted. So instead, being able to punctuate your day with small snippets of self hypnosis, or even incorporate it as a kind of psychological preparatory tool when you're going into a meeting, giving
Mm-hmm.
yourself good suggestions. When you're walking, being able to adopt a hypnotic mindset and tell yourself that your feet are lighter, or tell yourself that you're burning fat twice as effectively,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to do those kinds of things in a much more convenient fashion, and integrate it as a daily psychological tool, rather than something that requires a trance, or rather than something that requires you to be lying down and committing lengthy periods of time to.
Mm-hmm. You just said something very interesting. You can imagine burning fat twice as fast. Does that work? Is there clinical evidence for this?
So no, there's not. No, there's not.
Oh,
And
oh, that's
so
unfortunate. I
no,
would
no,
have
no.
liked that.
Unfortunately, there isn't. However, when there is an absence of direct evidence to support something, typically there's evidence that supports the hypothesis, so that there'll be related studies with regards to certain things.
Hmm.
So one of the reason why it has the capacity to be effective is because by believing that you're burning fat faster,
Hmm.
your cognitions and behaviors start to reflect someone who
Right.
would do that. So you start
Hmm.
to behave, you start to think, you start to believe as if you are a person that's happening to, and
Right.
thereby generate it. But second of all, there is a capacity that we are all psychologically capable of stoking our metabolism to a short extent at the very least.
Hmm.
When you get embarrassed, or you have a hot flush of a different kind, or when you do when you do a wide range of different things, when you make
Hmm.
yourself feel stressed, or something, you can speed up your metabolism by using your imagination
Hmm.
incorrectly sometimes.
Hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, that's something that we use a lot within the weight reduction programs, and the
Hmm.
the gym kind of stuff. I
Yeah.
think what I had a narrative review that was published, and it was talking about the role of self within hypnosis in general. So
Hmm.
it lent itself very nicely to the topic of self-hypnosis. But when we're talking about the application of or the role of self, one of the things that in my running days that I just fell in love with was that hypnosis can be used to systematically reduce perception of effort. And I was just
Hmm.
like, hang on, what? And someone showed me this
Hmm.
paper, and I just fell in love with it. And it was by a guy called Williamson back in 2010, showing that when they measured people's brains, when they were being given suggestions, hypnotic suggestions, when running,
Hmm.
and they gave suggestions to say you're running downhill, when
Hmm.
actually in real life they were running uphill.
Yeah.
There was because their perception of effort had not altered, their actual brains and their real levels of measurable effort were not being altered. And I
Hmm.
remember just thinking, fuck, this is amazing. This is like a wonderful discovery for me.
Yeah.
And I started using it with a lot of my endurance running. Now, when I felt like I just had to move on from running, and started doing other things, that same model of self-deception I found existed in a wide variety of other areas, but in particular with weight reduction. And anybody that follows me and sees my videos on Instagram and so on, when we're lifting weights and when we're doing weights, I I spend a lot of time, especially with 1 rep max or 3 rep max
Hmm.
lifts, deceiving myself,
Hmm.
using, with the adoption of a hypnotic mindset, adopting the mindset of this being a lighter weight that I
Hmm.
absolutely know I can nail. I
Hmm.
can nail this with ease, and
Yeah.
removing the sense of jeopardy from, a squat that's more than 200 kilos or something along those lines. Um, and I can remember making a mistake once, and 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 believing it was actually lighter
Hmm.
than than I was lifting, and
Right.
and measuring it, and becoming aware afterwards, and then thinking, yeah, there's some real life experience. And cognitive scientists, cognitive sports scientists, use that without hypnosis, and being
Hmm.
able to corral it, and advance it with hypnosis is a really impressive tool to bring with you into a gym, for example.
Yeah. So that
Yeah,
would be the same.
self-deception rules.
Self-deception. Yeah. I did have it written down, self-deception, so I can cross that out now as well, and the Stroop effect too. Um, so that would be the same with pain reduction, probably. I mean, I can now go to the dentist and have them drill into my teeth or do whatever without any shots or
Yeah,
anything, any
cool.
jabs. And they're like, oh, how do we do that? Well, I'm a hypnotherapist, but they never ask any further. It's not like, oh, can we send you our clients or our patients? But
Yeah,
that's kind of the same thing. I imagine that it's a lot less painful than it would be if I were,
yeah,
just a normal
yeah,
person. I mean, yeah, I'm still a normal
yeah.
person, but so
You're
perception
you're
of
not a
pain or
muggle.
perception of
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So perception of pain or perception of effort is very subjective,
Yeah,
correct?
oh, for sure it is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why self-hypnosis is so beautiful, because
Hmm.
self-hypnosis is subjective, right? If you get to adapt it and develop it
Hmm.
to yourself. And
Hmm.
and that's one of the things to love about it, that you make it, you own the experience, and
Hmm.
you do what you need to do to convince yourself, to make believe, to adjust and tune and tweak your own experience of reality. And
Hmm.
ultimately, a good hypnosis, a good self-hypnosis training teaches the individual how to believe in their own capacity to do that for
Hmm.
themselves in their own way. So you're quite right. Pain is very subjective, and the way in which people experience it is subjective. All the more cause, all the more reason to have an antidote that can be equally subjective and equally tailored.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, we could also talk about man flu and how women have a cold, and
Which is, yeah,
it's also very
which is
a thing
the
of
worst
perception.
affliction known to humankind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that self-hypnosis really empowers people and helps them grow, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. One of a major byproduct of self-hypnosis is what we refer to as self-efficacy. So
Hmm.
Albert Bandura, eminent psychologist, made this reference to self-efficacy, which is, whereby when you believe in your capacity to do something, you become better at doing that thing. So
Hmm.
your confidence has a knock-on impact upon your competence, basically.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it was something that sort of emerged out of sports performance initially, but then um, within the research, that there are often footnotes, often conclusive remarks being
Hmm.
made about people reporting the influence of self-efficacy.
Hmm.
And as this got measured and examined much more, I began to see that when people became better at doing self-hypnosis, their belief in their ability to do so grew. It
Hmm.
made sense, therefore, to teach people skills that demonstrated how capable they were, in order
Hmm.
that you can force self-efficacy to grow. So,
Right.
one of the reasons that we therefore teach people, how, very, very valuable life skills, such as, how you stick a pen to your own hand, how you stick your own hand to a table using self-hypnosis suggestions. Um, when you can do those things, when you get the capacity to do those things, you start to believe in your ability a lot more. And when you
Hmm.
believe in your ability more, your skills become better,
Hmm. Okay, so this question might fit in here. Um, not quite, but so is active alert hypnosis just basically imagining or saying affirmations while getting on with your day? So I
Hmm.
would kind of take that to, is self-hypnosis the same as affirmations or imagining?
Well, in order for the affirmation or the imagination to be really potent, to be really effective, if you can create a much more fertile landing point for it. So
Hmm.
by that, I would say that if you have expectancy and
Hmm.
belief, if
Hmm.
you are adopting the role of someone who just knows that's going to happen, so
Hmm.
some of those finer, and if you are corralling your attention and fixing it upon the point and making it
Hmm.
dominant, then
Hmm.
I guess under those circumstances you could say that they're similar. But
Yeah.
we teach a very specific hypnotic mindset that you adopt before you deliver the imagination,
Right.
before you deliver the affirmation, before you deliver the self-suggestion,
Mm-hmm.
and and how you phrase those self-suggestions. So a little bit like the spoonful of sugar helping the medicine go down,
Mm-hmm.
is such that, yeah, you I think one of the things we sometimes refer to suggestions, wanting to make suggestions stickier, to make
Mm-hmm.
them stick, to make them land, to make them, land really potently as a suggestion that will kind of get itself coded into that person's reality. And
Mm-hmm.
the way to increase the chances of that doing is the adoption of the mindset, to free it of any impediment. And so if there is the combination of imagination, if you have that capacity, you adopt the role of someone that really believes in that, and you believe in it, you know it, you give it your attention, your focus, and the really potent component part of expectation, and expect
Mm-hmm.
it to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think in combination, that makes, you know imagining or saying affirmations exponentially more than imagining or saying
Mm-hmm.
affirmations.
So that's why it's being said that affirmations on their own or positive self-talk on its own is not as effective.
Yeah,
Correct?
I mean, even as basic, even something, um, even something as basic as, saying, you know, like a grumpy teenager walking
Mm-hmm.
off saying, "Yeah, I remember to clean my room," compared to, I know I'm going to have a clean room later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The two styles, ultimately they're both saying the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
but the way in which they've been said, the meaning, the zest, the vigor, the belief, the expectation, the understanding, the knowledge, where they're positioned chronologically, there's 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 a lot of distinction. There's a lot of distinction that's going to make the suggestion land better and become somebody's reality, when there is the adoption of a hypnotic mindset to
Mm-hmm.
bring it to life.
Okay. So Jay's asking, the hypnotic mindset is frame, reframe, unsaid pre-talk? Not
Well, I
entirely sure.
guess, for people that are not familiar with the hypnotic mindset, which is, the vast majority of people that I talk to about it, then I suppose, rather than unsaid pre-talk, for me it would be psychoeducation. Psychoeducation is a precursor to to any clinical interaction,
Mm-hmm.
to create expectancy, to create more of the self-fulfilling prophecy. And I
Mm-hmm.
suppose, any so-called psychoeducation, as I put it, is establishing and creating a frame.
Mm-hmm.
So for sure, I think probably, a reframe would be if somebody had a sort of pre-existing notions which had the capacity to conflict with what I was saying, or 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 not dovetail in the way in which I would want necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
then perhaps we'd want to reframe as well. Yeah. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess, I
Okay.
guess so. I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was staring stupidly because Jay was holding up the book. If you could see it,
Ah,
the
yes, yes. That is an excellent book, Jay.
is
Yeah,
it the
yeah.
hypnotic? It is
Uh,
an excellent book.
that's
Which one is it, Adam?
that's the science of self-hypnosis. That's the
Science of
science of self-hypnosis.
Self-Hypnosis. There you go.
Jay is one of those three guys. Okay.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
One of the three who bought the book.
Thank you, Jay. You've reestablished my faith in humankind.
You basically paid for half a pint. Um, okay, so you mentioned a roadmap that you have for download, and we will put the link into the
Yeah.
show notes so that anybody who wants to can see this roadmap and
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah,
go
yeah. It's
on it.
it's completely free.
Hmm.
And what it has, what it contains in it is step by steps through the protocol that we teach,
Hmm.
that we teach research candidates
Mm-hmm.
at Bournemouth University psychology labs
Okay.
within. Yeah, so when we need to teach the self-hypnosis protocol, that's very, very similar to the way in
Mm-hmm.
which we teach it.
Okay. So what does
So
somebody need? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so the roadmap basically teaches people how to access the hypnotic process, how to be in control of it, how
Mm-hmm.
to sort of continually deepen and intensify their experience of it, how to deliver
Mm-hmm.
suggestions, and how to develop a relationship with themselves and boost effectiveness with it, and
Mm-hmm.
their self-efficacy as a byproduct, how to exit,
Mm-hmm.
hypnosis should that be needed for the sort of lengthier, more clinical applications. And importantly, gives a sort of a guide as to how you would reflect upon your own self-hypnosis experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important to be able to do that post session rather than
Mm-hmm.
during, because
Yeah.
you don't want to get distracted on doing that while it's happening. Is this working? Am I doing
Mm-hmm.
it?
Yeah.
Instead we want to show people how to reflect and develop their skills afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important to do that, because that's how you grow and become better and experientially learn.
Mm-hmm. Now, this next question might be how long is a piece of string? But from the moment that people do start the roadmap to being really good at it and really feeling empowered and having changed through self-hypnosis,
Yeah.
how long or how much practice do you think they would need?
Yeah, it is very similar to how long is a piece of string, because since um if the classic 10,000 hours of practice to become a genius at something.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
My brother works in the banking industry.
Hmm.
Um, when we were at school, if him and I were both given 10,000 hours of mathematics tuition, he
Hmm.
would have, we would both improve. Of course, we would
Yeah.
improve.
Hmm.
If I hadn't killed myself, then I would have developed, I would have built, but he would have flown and got to genius
Hmm.
levels much quicker than I. So there are certain sort of trait based, personality based, um, qualities that mean that those 10,000 hours would
Yeah.
reward him much more richly than they would
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
So, a lot of people are going to react and respond to self-hypnosis in different ways. Some
Hmm.
people find it a lot harder to believe in the effects that they're attempting to create. Some people
Hmm.
find it very difficult to compartmentalize certain thinking processes.
Hmm.
Some people find it
Hmm.
quite difficult to make believe in the way in which makes self-hypnosis so potent, and so
Hmm.
on. So
Hmm.
however, everybody with the correct tuition should be able to derive some effect, a
Hmm.
tangible effect, right away. Right
Hmm.
away. At least if you're doing it,
Yeah.
if you're properly applying yourself, if you're being a sort of passive recipient of it, you're less likely to be able to do that. If you're kind of
Hmm.
like, you know, expecting something to happen without application, um,
Hmm.
then then of course it's going to be negligible what you derive from it.
Hmm. So, either from your own experience or from what you know of the students and the people who have done the roadmap or have
Yeah.
practiced self-hypnosis, how do they start and how do they develop through it in general, like on an average?
Yeah, I would say that average people tend to think, wow, wow. Why is that not out there? It's worth bearing
Hmm.
in mind that university students are a very particular breed of people.
Hmm.
For us, they have to get involved in research to get credits for
Hmm. Yeah.
studying as
Yeah.
psychology undergraduates. But I would say that typically the average person is when they properly apply themselves are
Mm,
taken aback by it, and do think it's very cool.
mm-hmm,
I would and I would say that the vast majority of people find it very easy to elicit some of the fundamental applications of self hypnosis, hypnotic phenomena straight
mm-hmm.
away. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
some of the more complex and more demanding things, perhaps people find a bit more challenging, and
Yeah.
require a bit more practice. But yeah,
Right. So besides your own successes with, and let me name it, deadlifting 270 kilos and squatting
yeah,
240 kilos,
yeah. I'm pleased we got that
um,
recorded.
we have that on record now. I hope
Yeah,
it's true, and I'm not
I should
not
have sent in
repeating
pictures, shouldn't I?
repeating
Yeah.
lies here. Yeah. No, I've seen you. I've seen you lift at the UK convention, so hypnosis convention. So, what have you experienced as the greatest success, or like who or what surprised you the most in what self hypnosis could achieve?
Well, I mean, I think as clinicians in general, we do sometimes tend to get a little bit blasé about some of the most
Hmm.
amazing things that happen. But people having their teeth removed using only
Hmm.
self-hypnosis, I find incredible.
Yeah.
I worked with a guy called Gareth Lee Morgan. If you Google Adam Eason and Gareth Lee Morgan, you'll see an article that I wrote and photographs of him where he learned self-hypnosis. He did the entire thing for himself. He learned
Hmm.
self-hypnosis, went and had his wisdom teeth removed,
Ooh, yeah.
using the skills,
Hmm.
which was exceptional. I
Yeah.
worked with an endurance athlete. During my own running years, I worked with lots of runners as well when my book was sort of at its height.
Hmm.
And I worked with a man called William Sitchell, who's
Hmm.
a Scottish endurance runner, and
Hmm.
some of the things and some of the world records that he achieved with endurance and the way in which he applied his mind, very strong-minded man, but the
Hmm.
way in which he applied his mind, because when you're an endurance runner, you have a lot of time alone inside of your own head,
Yeah.
and it's a very fertile place to
Hmm.
apply self-hypnosis. It's a lot easier, believe it or not. I almost used to welcome and derive some perverse pleasure from the pain I used to get.
Hmm.
When you're running mile 75 of a 100
Yeah.
mile race, through mountains, and you've run 3 marathons back to back, and you've got to run another one,
Hmm.
and everything's hurting, and you're using self-hypnosis to overcome that, to reduce the cortisol that's in your system and so on.
Yeah.
I used to find that incredible.
Hmm.
Now it's fleeting compared to that because I'm using it in an explosive pattern, or I'm using it as preparation, a
Hmm.
mental preparation for something that's going to take a few seconds
Hmm.
rather than being hours. I think as well, teaching self-hypnosis skills that then get applied in real life achievements. People
Hmm.
going on to use it for their studies, people that go on to use it to improve their experience of childbirth, those
Hmm.
kind of things is really cool, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I did that too. Without knowing that it was self-hypnosis, but there we are.
You've done it
And
all, Astrid, when it
I've
comes
done
to this
everything
stuff.
and even more. No, I haven't done everything, but those two things I have done. But there's another question. Would self-hypnosis also help people with restless leg syndrome?
So, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, as with any kind of responsible sort of clinical application, you want to understand the process of what's going on, make sure there's no underlying pathology and so on, and
Mhm.
not use it as not use self-hypnosis as an out and out panacea, or an out and out
Mhm.
alternative, but certainly to improve the quality of your life in terms of the symptoms, with regards to getting to sleep. You know, I've worked with lots of people in the clinical environment whereby restless leg syndrome has really impaired their ability to sleep. So being able
Mhm.
to still oneself accordingly. Um, Professor Zoltan Dienes at the University of West Sussex does some of the most amazing experiments with arms, hypnotic suggestion, and the box mirrors. I don't know if you've seen
Oh, the
any of those
hand
things.
and the
Yeah,
hammer. Oh,
where
yeah.
it looks like you've got both of your arms by the side, and where actually there's a box mirror and
Mhm.
a fake arm that you're given hypnotic suggestions to work with your and they start tickling the fake arm
Mhm.
and you start getting the tickle on your actual arm. And some similar interventions have been done with phantom limbs, for example, where people have been able to scratch itches
Mhm.
on severed limbs, you know, and things along those lines. I realize that it's not quite the same, but the hypnotic the hypnotic framework gives you the capacity to really deal with a limb
Mhm.
like it is dissociated, like it's almost like it's separate from you,
Mhm. Mhm.
with a range of different types of things. A swell, you know. So I think it gives you the capacity to help in those terms. And I would probably look to see if there was any sort of psychological or psychosomatic component that was contributing to the restless leg that would derive some benefit from self-hypnosis. But otherwise, you know, primarily, I think I would probably be using self-hypnosis to advance quality of life,
Mhm.
which might not be the answer that the questioner was after. I'm sorry, I couldn't see who asked that because I couldn't
That
see
was
it.
Maggie. No,
Right.
she messaged privately, but instead of
Right.
asking
Oh,
the chat.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm sorry. There's probably a lot of me sitting on the fence there, Maggie. But hopefully, I've given you a few ideas that might prove useful.
Mhm. So, you just said got into kind of the contraindications a little bit. Who should not use self-hypnosis?
Well, I think typically and on the record, as this is being recorded, I need to say in my capacity as trainer and clinician and someone moderately responsible that all the contraindications that would apply to hetero-hypnosis should be
Mhm.
applying to self-hypnosis.
Mhm.
So I think, you know, but probably primarily that would be, you know, detachment from reality. If you
Mhm.
have really strong delusions, hallucinations, for example, then it's probably ill-advised to be doing something that magnifies
Mhm.
experience,
Mhm.
um, or magnifies quality of experience.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I would probably say that. I think that yeah, for the record and importantly and officially, I need to take that line with anything that's
Mhm.
being recorded. I think,
Yeah.
you know, what while we sat at the bar at the UK Hypnosis Convention, then there may be some grey areas that you and I might discuss, and that I might
Mhm.
say, well, look, I would potentially make an exception under these circumstances, and so on. Um, but I don't think that would be very ethical or responsible for me to say that on a recording.
No, that's correct. So let's leave it at that. Is there any danger in doing self-hypnosis
Well,
outside of those contraindications?
not, you know, not if it's done as as it's recommended.
Hmm.
No, I think it would be very difficult to really, you know, I think you probably would have been prone to some of the problems, and some of the dangers with or without self-hypnosis if it's
Hmm.
ever going to be used in a way in which is going to create a danger. So I think
Hmm.
self-hypnosis per se doesn't really make anything more dangerous outside of the sort of contraindications that I recommended earlier.
Hmm. And you've been studying self-hypnosis for decades. basically. What would you like to see happen in the next few years or decades in
Well,
that area?
yeah, I think one of the things that's been a sort of raison d'etre for me as far as the field of hypnosis is concerned in general has been to see it, to see it become legitimized a lot more, and self hypnosis in particular, to see it becoming or having the same sort of PR image as mindfulness, for example,
Hmm.
where everybody considers it something that they can do, that they could incorporate, that they could introduce and bring into their lives.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that it becomes far, far more credible. So I
Hmm.
think I would like to see a lot of the nonsense erased, and
The
that's one of the
nonsense.
yeah, unfortunately, I just think that, very often when, as soon as you mention the word hypnosis, as soon as you mention the word self-hypnosis, I was on a podcast about increasing sports performance a little while
Hmm.
ago, and
Hmm.
I started off being the butt of the jokes.
Oh,
I started off being the butt of the jokes because hypnosis was the topic. Hypnosis was the main tool rather than some of the more sort of conventional perceived things. And when I was to speak about some of the science and some of the applications and mention my lifting numbers again,
hmm. Hmm.
I was in a position to then be able to uh, you know to be able to sort of be perceived more credibly,
Hmm.
basically. And so,
Hmm.
I think that's something I would really like to see more of going forward, for sure.
More credibility for
Yeah,
self-hypnosis and potential
credibility,
hypnosis.
more sort of
Yeah.
adherence to some of the science, or the research at least informing people a little bit more. And
Hmm.
generally what that tends to mean is that people need to be aware of it in the first instance, and
Yeah.
it just isn't taught in the depth and breadth that it should be.
What do
And
you mean in the first instance?
so I mean, when people are being trained,
Hmm.
when they're being taught,
Hypnotherapy. Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Same thing.
hypnosis and hypnotherapy. When I took over the UK Hypnosis Convention, we had Irving Kush, one of the most prolific
Mm.
researchers in the field of
Non-state. Yeah.
hypnosis and placebo and so on. And I was staggered by the amount of frontline hypnotherapists who had no idea who he was.
Oh.
We had Stephen J. Lynn.
Hmm.
We had we had some major academics who weren't well marketed trainers, but had
Yeah.
made a significant impact upon the field, and very few people were aware of them or had been taught anything about them. A few
Right.
years ago, we had the co-editor of the Oxford Handbook of Hypnosis, an Australian
Hmm.
researcher, a lady called Amanda Barnier. She did some of
Hmm.
the most amazing research using hypnosis to replicate delusions in order
Wow.
that the brain, delusions in the brain could be studied. I'm immense and prolific researcher. Even Eva Banier, who I mentioned earlier about active alert hypnosis, came over and spoke. And you know, people just had never been taught who she
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And so, there were,
Yapgo last year. Yes. That was great.
yeah, I mean,
Lovely.
yeah, we had Michael Yapko, and he was sort of, verging on celebrity status, and he was getting there, and and yeah, so I think um there was, yeah, I think I'd just like to see more people be more aware
Yeah.
of and informed by some of the research. Yeah,
Modern research,
yeah, for
not just
sure.
the old classic like Mesmer.
Yeah, yeah,
We have advanced slightly.
yeah, we have.
Okay, wonderful. Um, is there anything you guys would like to ask who are live right now? Then ask your questions now, or ask them later in the comments. And anybody watching on YouTube or on Facebook, you are welcome to leave comments too, and you might get them even answered, the comments and the questions. And thank you, Adam, so much for being here.
Oh,
Is
you're
there
very welcome. I think I was member 1001 in your, I think you introduced
that's
me just after the thousand got
I
hit.
think
So
so.
like,
I
I'm
mean,
in there, and
there's
if people want to ask questions,
yeah, wonderful.
I might even answer them. Yeah.
Just tag you. Um, okay, so we have several things that we're going to put into the show notes, by the way. So your book, so that you sell a fourth copy, hopefully,
Yeah.
or maybe the old book. I think you might have sold the odd one more. Your college, the roadmap to self-hypnosis, and a link to the UK Hypnosis Convention, where I'll be speaking as well. So I'm plugging myself now. I think I'm doing quantum and quackery at yours.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Do you know what we have a really strong I wanted to make it that this year's we consciously wanted a really strong female representation this
Ooh,
year, and have a female keynote for the first time
wow.
since I've been organizing it. We have and we have a really the whole day on the Saturday, for example, in the main theatre is all female presenters, all
Wow.
female lecturers, and so we're really excited about that this year. We have Paul McKenna coming back this year,
Oh,
and we have more speakers than ever this year. So we're really excited about it.
that's great. I'm looking forward to it. And hope Dr. Elise Payes. Payes? Is that how
Yeah,
you pronounce the name?
Pies. Yeah,
Yeah,
Alice
Payes.
Pies. Um, she's very cool. She's very cool. Like
Mhm.
every time I have a like a regular conversation with her, um, yeah, she makes me feel very thick indeed.
Well, I have to say that you do not seem thick, at least on this podcast. I think most people listening to you will feel slightly thick because we have been using a lot of jargon tonight. Um, never
Yeah.
mind, guys. If you have
Yeah,
questions
why
about
use
any of
one
the
word when
words,
you can
just
use
ask.
eight, as far as I'm concerned?
Exactly, and use the ones that you have to find in a
And be
dictionary.
verbose.
But
Yeah.
no, if there's any questions, guys, do ask them. And yeah, thanks everybody on the on the live chat.
Thank you.
And
Thank you those
I'll
that joined us live. It was really nice to see you. I
yeah,
really appreciate
hey, good,
um,
nice format, isn't it?
you coming and taking the time to come and listen. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And next week we will be having Graham Wood, who will be talking about the power of the pre-talk and why you need a pre-talk, and not just the regular 2 seconds, but a little bit longer and more extensive. And I'm looking forward to that too. So have a good evening or a good day, and let us know what you thought. Give us a thumbs up, and talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you, Astrid. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Adam.